You probably know her as the cute blonde that is fantastic on video, and she gives incredible value to her audience. Through her podcast, newsletter, YouTube, and Instagram, Virginia Kerr gives high level strategy for business owners who need to connect with their audience. I started following Virginia, interacting, and then recently jumped into This is Video School, her value driven, self guided course on how to create videos that convert listeners or watchers to customers. We bonded over a one on one call where I divulged and told her I used the word panties in my very first podcast episode 7 years ago. Shewy buddy. That's all I got to say about that. Virginia has helped me and countless others use storytelling in our videos to connect with our audiences and become the real us on camera. Listen to our episode together when Virginia shares how she found her business coach and where she gains most of her clients. You may be surprised or not. Welcome back to Don't Wing It. I am excited that you are going to get to hear from a gal that you probably know already from Instagram, and her name is Virginia Kerr. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you for having me.
This is fun because Virginia and I met online and then I stalked her like we all do. I mean, come on, y'all. You know, you go to her for the video tips. I know y'all out there. And then I was intrigued with her video school course and I pulled the trigger in December and it has been incredible. And so I have gotten to know her through her trainings. And then also she goes live and answers your question if you're in This is Video School, like incredible. But what I want to say is she's the video guru that you all know and you all love. And so I'm excited to have her on the podcast today. And we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to do a deep dive behind the scenes. I know y'all like behind the scenes things. And so we're going to talk about her story and then also some really cool nugget that I found out about her. So are you ready, Virginia? Are you ready to go?
I'm so ready. I don't think everybody knows me, Ren, but thank you for saying that.
Okay, so let's go back because you started an account on Clapper and I followed you over there and then I started a Clapper and it was really cool because it was really fast growth. I say was because I haven't been on there in like a week, but I was
been on there
every
more than a
day.
week.
You haven't either. Okay. Because I was just like, it's really cool because you can get a lot of followers quickly now. Are they a lot of, Joe Blow? Probably. But I started having people follow me over on Instagram and on my email list from Clapper. And so on one of my videos, you commented and said, something I was talking about podcast and getting a coach and things like that. And you said, yeah, I found my business coach through her podcast. So I want to hear about that. Tell me the story.
Oh, it's like the whole story.
Well, just shortened, just the high point.
I mean, no.
I love it. I love it.
So this is again, early on. So this was like August of 2019. I had gone to a marketing conference. Now you don't know this part of the story.
I don't.
And when we were walking in, there was like a montage of people like sharing the bravest thing they ever did. And her line was, I reached the top 2% of my company in network marketing. And then I started my own business and walked away. And then I didn't see her. I just heard her as I was finding my seat, and my friend elbowed me and she's like, oh my gosh, that's you. You need to go. Because I didn't know, again, I didn't have a business yet. I just felt pulled to start something new and I was terrified. And so that's it. I heard her, didn't know her name, didn't see her face, done. So fast forward, I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm getting a little bit more clarity about, okay, I do want to talk about video tips on Instagram, but I still was all over the place. And I'm listening to a podcast and the person that was being interviewed said the very same line she said when she was talking about the bravest thing she ever did. I'm like, oh, it's her. I found her. It's her. So immediately after I listened to that interview, I go binge all of her content on her podcast. Because I think I was driving home from Alabama. And so a lot of times that's what I'll do is I just listen to podcasts every pod. By the time I was done, by the time I'd driven back from Alabama, I was like, she is my best friend and
Yeah.
we have to work together.
I love
And
it.
that's what happened. And to this day, her name is Stephanie Gass, and she is my business coach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is incredible. And that's
Yes,
the power of podcasting for
it
sure.
is.
For sure.
There is something about listening and having somebody in your ear that is so intimate, even compared to video in some ways,
Mhm.
because they have our, like, we're able to do other things, but we are really just in tune to what they're saying. And I can listen to a long podcast
Mhm.
when I'm doing things and really feel like I'm with that person. And that's the power of long form content in general. That's what I tell people all the time is have fun with your reels and your TikToks. But if you really want to convert people, you've got to utilize long form content, whether that's a podcast or a YouTube video, because that's where your diehards will go. That's where they expect you to have longer content and spend more time with you. And they are going to get closer to you and get closer to buying from you
Mhm.
faster with long form content.
It's true. It's true. I had somebody say, I binged your listen to your content and I went into my boss and said, can I hire her for podcast coaching?
Yeah.
And so it's that commit, it's that connection that people have, the intimate connection. And it is, I mean, you're binging, listening to everything and you were ready. Like it was just like, yes, you're ready to go. I want to go back to what you said something about, um, you were going to start something new. You were going to start something new and you were terrified. What would you say to that business owner right now that knows and wants to start something new? Maybe it's video, maybe it's a podcast, and they are terrified. What would you say to them specifically about video?
If you're terrified, but you feel pulled to do it, then that means that there is something in it on the other side, whether that's a valuable lesson, whether that's your new career path, whether that's a person that God is going to put in your path that you're going to help that you may never even know, never meet. There is a reason you are terrified. Things that are
Mm.
not scary are not important to us. Like, I don't want to climb Mount Everest, therefore climbing Mount Everest is not scary to me. But if I was terrified of it, but I felt pulled to go train and climb Mount Everest, that means that there's something on the other side there for me. So that's what I meant by following your curiosity. When you see it, when you recognize that following your curiosity is helping you to discover your path and maybe even another purpose, then you know that it is worth it. There's a reason you're being pulled to it. But if you're
Mm.
not afraid of it, then it must not be very valuable to you. And it's not something that you're pulled to do.
Mm. That's good. I like that phrase. There's a reason for it. There is a reason for it if you are feeling pulled that way. Yeah. And I had heard if it doesn't terrify you, then like you said, it's not worth it. But it, it you need to be a little bit. You need to be a little
Yeah.
bit scared of it because then it's just
Because
you're in
that
your
means it's
comfort zone.
big. That means it's a big deal. If you're
It's a big
scared of it,
deal.
that means you are going to be put out of your comfort zone. You are going to learn new things, acquire new
Yeah.
skills, but you won't know where it's taking you if you don't try. So
Yeah.
when you focus on, okay, but I'm curious. Yes, it's scary,
Mm.
but I'm curious and I know I'm going to gain something from this. Then it helps. It doesn't mean you're not going to be scared, but it helps you push through that fear.
Yeah. The fear's going to be there, but you
Yeah.
got to push through it. Just what you said. Yeah.
And the
So
more you
let's
do that, the more you exercise that muscle, that courage muscle, the
mm,
more the easier it's going to be the next time you're scared to do something. Still scared, but you recognize that feeling. You're like, oh, this is a good, this means something good's on the other side, and you're more likely to push through and faster.
yes, yes. Okay, so let me go back to that. You said you started on Instagram and your podcast. So what made you do that? Business coach?
Oh no, I
This is
started my
before.
podcast before I found her. So the
Okay.
podcast was again where I was on Facebook at the time because I
Okay.
remember I recorded a video saying, all right, I don't know what I'm going to be talking about, but I'm starting a podcast. I remember
Love it.
announcing that on Facebook, and I think I just started maybe in April. On Instagram, it was terrible. My Instagram was so awful.
Mm,
I've archived a lot of it, but there are still some of the original posts. It just
really?
was so fake. It was
Mm,
so perfected. It was just gross. It makes me cringe when I look at it. But I had to throw stuff out to see what worked and what didn't work. I had to make the mistakes of copying other people and trying to do what they did, thinking that was going to work for me. And it felt gross because it wasn't genuine. And there was no reels over on Instagram. So that was 2019. That was June of 2019. Then I went to that marketing thing in August. And I started doing video tips, still pretty cringy looking, but I mean, I knew what I was talking about. I've been doing it half my life.
Right.
But I'd never done video on social media. So I thought it was a big difference. And there are differences, but there's also similarities. And then in October of 2019, I started my first TikTok account. And so the way that I looked at TikTok was nobody that I know is on TikTok, because at that point, most adults were not on TikTok.
Right.
And this was my playground to play and experiment and do whatever I wanted. I was not giving any tips over there. I was just acting a fool, like characters, you name it, ridiculous, over the top stuff. But that was a way for me to get my creative juices flowing. And then eventually I started to bring some of that over to Instagram, like in my stories, because again, it wasn't video tips related. But then in April of 2020, I started my second TikTok account. And that, again, before Reels was around, I started doing video tips on a second account there. So when Reels launched in August of 2020, I was like, let's go. I know all about this. And that's how my Instagram account started to take off, like big time.
Okay. And then the podcast was kind of alongside that?
Yeah. So my podcast, eventually, as I started talking about video marketing, it was a way for me to go all in unedited. So for me, podcasting, I do a simple structure. I know what I'm going to talk about. A lot of times it's something I've taught on video, but I just adapt it to a podcast. And so it's a lot more like you would get me right now. It's just, like I said, I don't edit unless I have a long pause. I don't edit my podcast.
Yeah.
And I get more personal there. I give more of the why behind the scenes and the mistakes that I make and what I learned from them.
And I love when I saw you had a podcast. When I first found you, I was like, oh yeah, she's doing this right. Because you have to have, like you said earlier, long form content that you can share, and people respond to that as well. And so let me ask you this. What have you seen from your podcast that you really love about it, or that you've seen from it?
In my program, This is Video School, I have a Facebook group, and I ask a few questions for those who are requesting to enter the group. And one of them is, what was the last piece of content that sealed the deal for you and got you to join This is Video School? And I am amazed at how many people say your podcast, or I was already following you on Instagram and all your YouTubes, but it was that podcast episode about blah, blah, blah that got me to say, this is for me. And I was like, really? Because, I'm a video coach, and it's the podcast that's converting. Not all of them are podcasts, but I'm floored by the amount that do say that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is incredible when you have that, because you're like, wait, video. But I think I'm going to say this. I think a lot of your video school are both, because when you have a video that you say, I know you're saying more from not more from the podcast, but a lot of them, when you do a video that sells, which doesn't even feel like you're selling because we know you, but when you say DM for the link about video school, people are like, link, like they are all about it. And so, that's what I did. So I love the aspect of the podcast as well. So you did Instagram and podcast, and you saw it just explode from those two, correct?
Yeah. The Reels is what I think, because that's what I was teaching. That's what I teach is Reels and TikTok and live and YouTube. So that exploded. The podcast, well, before I had my course, I did one-on-ones only. And every single one of those clients were listeners of the podcast, every single one. And now that was before Reels. Right. But again, I a couple things here. First of all, I don't put as much pressure on me to do all the right things when I'm on a podcast. Like, I'm not having to worry about hashtags. I'm not having to worry about only talk about this, even though most of my podcasts are about video marketing, like
Right.
99%. I
Mhm.
will have ones where I just do a little bit more personal stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that obviously is getting people to get to know me better. Whereas I don't do that as much on Reels. You will get
Right.
that in Instagram stories, but it goes back
Mhm.
to, but those are not long form pieces of content.
Right.
And with the podcast, it's unedited. I think you really feel like you're just talking to me like we are right now in a
Yep.
podcast versus me having to edit a video and make sure that
Right.
everything's just right for the algorithm, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, and I like the idea of the personal because when there are personal podcast episodes, those are the ones we go to first because we want to know more. We're nosy probably, but those are the
Oh yeah.
ones we go to and we get to know you. And then that makes us love you even more. So I think there's benefits with both, with short term and long term content
When
for sure.
I can remember, and I will not say any names, but I can remember the first time I ever listened to a podcast. And I remember this was my main person that I listened to all the time. But what I couldn't handle was that her podcast was scripted. And I thought that was so weird. And so when I started my podcast, I was like, I do not want to sound scripted. I
Mhm.
want this to be the me you would get if we were hanging out having coffee together. I obviously have a
Plan.
outline. I have to
Right.
stay on point, but I
Yeah.
did not want to script. And I think because I set that standard for myself in the very beginning, it's
Mhm.
been a very enjoyable, relaxing way for me to connect with my audience. And again, I'm not a podcast coach, so I don't put that pressure on me for it to be just
Right.
right, just perfect.
Right. Well, and I think I think in general, as business owners, we like things scripted because we want to have to make sure we cover all the things and we want to make sure that we sound polished. And the fact about podcasting, and as video, is people want, yes, you've got to get your hook title out there. You've got to, you've got to know what you're saying and do it in a short amount of time for video. And then with long form, you can, take more time, but you come across so much better when you have bullet points. I say just bullet point it and then
Yeah.
you've got a guide and then go with it. So I definitely think a lot of people struggle with the scripted. So how do we do that with video? That we know we need to script it, but how do we do that? Well,
Well, I have a different mindset when it comes. Now I'm thinking YouTube because it's long form content. So with YouTube, the purpose of those videos are not for me to grow an audience; they're to convert my audience.
mm,
Whereas a lot of people are like, I just want a really big audience. I'm like, well, that's great. But let me tell you something. I have almost 1 million followers on TikTok
mhm,
and I don't make a lot of money on there. And I don't even post over there now, but it's just because they are not a connected audience.
right.
They're just not, they're not as engaged. So now I look at it as like, okay, but where's the content? Who makes the most money? If I'm talking to all my pieces of content, like who's
Yep.
making the most money for me? And it's podcast and YouTube and Reels, but like I said,
100%.
usually most of the time someone has listened to a podcast or watched my YouTube videos before they sign up with me.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's really important for us to think about the word convert. What are we doing here? Are we wanting for those vanity metrics and to grow? And growth is fine, but are they really converting? And that's the thing. A lot of people don't know that with a smaller audience, we can have those that convert because of those relationships that we've continued. I packed out my first beta group for group coaching for podcasting because of the fact that I had relationships with people for over 2 years. So
Yeah.
on Instagram. Okay, so how can we up our game in the area of video?
I think a lot of people, again, they're so fixated on the fear and they're looking at other people who are doing well in their industry and they think that's what they are supposed to do. It really comes down to who are you talking to? Who is your ideal person? How are you going to get them to recognize that you are speaking directly to them? So you've got to have those words that speak directly to them, but you also cannot give vague information or information that they've heard everywhere else because they will tune that out and they will not remember you. And that's why storytelling is so powerful because you can take the same tips and advice that someone in your industry is giving, but when you package it in a story that is a personal story of yours or a personal story of someone you've helped, now it's a whole new animal. Now
Mm,
they are more likely to recognize you, connect with you, and remember you. So I would say knowing who you're talking to and then getting better at storytelling. And storytelling does not mean that the entire video is a story. It could just be one sentence that helps them understand where you're coming from and why you know what you know. Also strategy. So when you have a strategy and you know the different types of videos that you need to be posting, ones that get you attention, ones that help connect with your audience, ones that position you as an authority, ones that prove that you get people help. When you've got those, now you're never going to run out of content because you know, or you should know who your person is, what it is you help them with, all the different ways that you can help them, and then the different formats and angles that you're going to take to show that you are their person and you actually do get people results. When you do that in a balance every week, you're going to start seeing more people buy from you.
Yep.
If you are actually doing what you claim you do and helping with what you claim you help with.
So tell us a little bit about video school. This is video school, and like there's 9 modules. Like it's incredible. Like I'm going to toot your horn so much right now, but I want you to share like how did you craft it? Like how did you put it together? Because it's real, the resources, like tell a little.
Well, so I started this video school in August of 2020. The version, well, not even that version, but the first version of my course launched in 2020. I've since redone the entire thing. Yeah. But before that, I had a group coaching that I used as my beta. So I would teach these women in Facebook Live. And that really helped me see what was important to them, what was not important to them, what I needed to add, what I needed to take out. And so that's when that helped me draft my outline for the course. Since then, I've gone through and I update and I change things. A lot of times when we do our challenges inside video school, that helps me realize that, ooh, I need to go tweak that lesson inside there because y'all ask good questions. And then as I grew with my video journey, the course grew. All of the stuff that I teach applies to public speaking as well.
So go through the 9 modules real quick.
Okay. So in the very beginning, whether you've already figured it out or not, you're going to get a refresher on how you know who you're talking to, what it is that sets you apart from your competition. How do you stand out? How do you use stories like we just talked about to help people not only take notice of you, but remember you? Yeah. And then we talk about your content system, how to write, good captions that'll eventually, we talk about writing scripts. And one of the things that I added when I redid it that I don't see other people talk about is your body language and your personality type and how to make that translate onto video. Again, going back to, you can see someone who's doing really well. Like you can see someone doing really well on video and try to act like them. And the energy is going to be off because it's not you. So we really dive into, and I even take famous people and I pick them apart. Like, this is why these people are so successful with their videos. And then it goes into Instagram strategy, everything about Instagram, obviously including reels, but not just that, carousel posts and strategy on Instagram. Then I go into all about editing video. So how to shoot B-roll, how to add B-roll, the easiest 10-minute reels you can ever think of. And then the more complicated, like character reels, because that's what I really like to do. And after that, we go into live video strategy. And then we go into sales strategy. So I talk about how to sell on reels, how to sell on stories, on lives, even in the DMs. And then the last module is the YouTube module. And so I made it so it is a monster course, but it's one of those things where if all you wanted to do is master Instagram right now, you can do that and then come back for live or come back for YouTube. So you get lifetime access until August. I'm changing some things in August. It's not that you won't be able to get lifetime access. It's just that you'll have to pay like a subscription every year because I'm adding more support. So right now we do a live Q&A session once a month. We're going to add more. So it'll be more than just once a month, just because I know what it feels like when people start video. They just want someone to say, why didn't this work? So I won't continue to repeat the problem. Please. So that's what the challenges and the live Q&As are for. So you can really take what you learn in This is Video School, and then we help you apply it.
That's so good. And also it's helpful to be able to talk to you and say, hey, can you look at this? Can you critique this? Now I'm doing it more than I would have thought about 2 years ago when I just jumped on Instagram. But the repeated, like that we don't repeat the same mistakes. It's
Yeah,
so
and to know
valuable.
that all that time you put into your reels is actually gonna pay off versus,
Yeah.
"I slapped all this stuff up there and nothing's
Mm.
happening. What's going on?"
Yeah.
You
Well, you didn't
wasted all
use the
this
strategy
time.
for one. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then also for you to be able to look at reels, but then also give that accountability. Like when you do the challenges right as soon as you have a launch for This is Video School, it's great because it's that accountability. Okay. So we talked a lot. I could go on for hours, but we're not. So I did want to ask, where can people find This is Video School and where can they find you if they don't know you already? I know they know you, but we want them to know you even better. Maybe mention your podcast and YouTube as well.
They're all called the same thing. This
There
is
you go.
Virginia Kerr, Kerr. And then I have thisisvirginiakerr.com. So you can find the sales page for Video School and read all about it over there. And that's it. It's everywhere
Great.
I am is called the same thing.
It's so good. So I have one more question that's totally selfish. Okay.
Okay.
So the question that I have that is about having an only kiddo. Okay.
Oh,
So it is because I want to steward my time well this summer. And I have asked everybody, like I could be at a restaurant and I see a mom with kids and I'm like, hey, how do you do your business with your kids at home in summer? Like I need to know, like strangers, I could walk up to strangers and ask this question because I want to know what people are doing. And so what is the best way that how do you steward your work plus have an only child, your son, especially in the summer? Tell me what you do.
well, I do not have all the answers, but camps, and
Yeah.
more camps.
Okay. I thought
Because
so.
I want that boy off his iPad and I want him with
Yes.
people and I want him doing
Right.
what he loves. So we've already done a mini football camp. He's about to go into basketball and football camp next week. I need more camps. So anybody in the St. Louis area, tell me about some camps.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, and then I'm trying to make sure that we have an outing every week together as well, at least once a
Okay.
week, so
Mhm.
that we're doing enjoyable things. I was just talking to my husband yesterday. This is the summer of the kitchen because we're redoing our kitchen.
That's right.
So it makes me feel like I can't go on any big vacations, but we're going to try to find maybe just a 4-day lake
Mhm.
vacation, just little things
Yeah.
like that. He wants to go to Six Flags, ugh, but I'll go.
I
I'm
can't
the
stand
parent who will
Six
do the
Flags.
roller coasters. So I
Ugh.
think you have to keep them busy and also give yourself permission to scale back. You don't
Yeah,
have to keep the same exact workload during the summer as you did during the fall. That's the beauty of us having our own businesses.
it
So
is.
I see it that way. Like last week, I did a reel every other day instead of a reel every
Mhm.
day because we went down to Alabama for the football camp. So
Mhm.
I mean, and also this will put it into perspective real fast. Count how many summers you have left with your child before they go to college.
Yeah.
And it'll be a lot easier for you to put down the phone and the
Mhm.
computer and plan
Mhm.
something with your child. Cause it's like 5.
Yep.
And by the time we get to probably 3 or 4, he's not even want to hang out with me anyway. So get him while
Exactly.
they still want you.
Right. That's what I was saying. I'm like, we have 8. And actually that last summer before college or before whatever, um, that's a no-go or even a few more. So I totally get that. And I
I
love that
read
you
something the other day that 93% of the time you will spend with your child is before the age of 18. Yeah. After that,
whoa,
yeah, I know.
that is crazy. 93%.
Yeah. Cause once they leave the house, I mean, think about, well, I don't know about you, but I see my parents a lot more now. But
Mm,
when I first moved away across country, I went a year,
mm.
at least a year without seeing them because I didn't have the money to fly home. But anyway, that's a
Right,
whole other
right,
thing. But
right.
I'm just saying, like
Yeah, yeah.
they leave and now they're not like in the next room.
Uh-huh. And that's the thing. It's like I wrote down the flexibility. That's why we started our business was for flexibility to have more time with our family. So I'm always curious, especially with people that have only kids, like how do they do it? And so I agree. I'm meeting with clients during morning camp. We have it 2 days a week. So I'm like, okay, I can meet with one-on-one and then kind of just not wing it
I know
because
because they
don't
don't
wing
have
it.
a sibling to play with or fight with. And so
Right.
they're more
Hmm.
likely to be on the iPad or yeah.
Hmm.
And I don't want
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, thanks so much for coming on the Don't Wing It podcast to tell us your story and all about video and about how you started your podcast and how you found your business coach through a podcast. It has been amazing. So, y'all go check her out at This is Virginia Kerr everywhere. Thanks so much for coming,
Thank
Virginia.
you, Ren. I always love spending time with you. It was fun.